Amid Portugal's dominance overseas, a Portuguese man born in Angola would find love in the arms of a black woman born in Mozambique. This unlikely romance would see them both move to Mozambique, where they would create a large family, despite the poverty lived in the country at the time. Their fourth child would have something special, a gift. Despite having to deal with the early death of his father, soon he would grow in love with the sport, soon joining an amateur team who at the time had so little funding that the players had to train with balls made of socks stuffed with newspapers. But soon, he would move to the local club Sporting Clube de Lourenço Marques, and his talent would be so evident that a Juventus scout would have a conversation with his mom, begging her, "Please let me take Eusébio." As the name shows, Sporting Clube Lourenço Marques was a Sporting CP subsidiary, and the Portuguese club was working on bringing over Eusébio, but as they assumed the deal would go easily, they refused to pay him before having him prove his worth in their youth system. Their Lisbon rivals Benfica would hear about Eusébio, and specifically after hearing that the 18-year-old could run 100 meters in less than 11 seconds, which at the time was very close to the Olympian record, they would decide it was time to hijack the transfer. And when I say hijack, I don't mean just monetarily. They would fly to Mozambique and talk to Eusébio's family, as they were so interested in signing him that even as Eusébio demanded twice the amount of money of their initial proposal, Benfica would instantly give in. As the deal was agreed, Eusébio would be put on a plane to Portugal, arriving in Lagos. As Sporting became aware of what was going on, Benfica would inform them that the player was traveling on a boat, sending Sporting on a wild goose chase and buying themselves some time. Meanwhile, Eusébio was kept in an hotel under the identity of a Portuguese girl so that Sporting were unable to find him. As Benfica managed to dodge every single one of Sporting's attempts to stop the boy from signing for them, a few days later he would officially become a Benfica player. Despite this, it would be a whole year before they were able to register him to play in the league, in what will be remembered as one of the wildest transfer sagas of all time. In his first match he would play for Benfica, he would score 3 out of the 4 goals as the club beat Atlético Clube Portugal. Eusébio would make the newspaper covers worldwide for the first time, as the next year, in a match against Pelé Santos in a preseason tournament, he would be brought in as Benfica were being defeated 4-0, and in as little as 14 minutes, Eusébio would score a hat-trick and be fouled inside the penalty area. Despite his goal-scoring prowess, he would not take the penalty himself and the other player would miss, and Benfica would lose anyway. Regardless, this would be seen as a warning to the world that a new goal machine was here to replace Pelé. The next season he would become the team's main man, taking them in an incredible European journey where they would beat Rapid Vienne, Nuremberg and Tottenham before facing Real Madrid in the final. The mighty Madrid team was stacked with talents such as Ferenc Puskás and Alfredo Di Stefano, but that day, even though Puskás would get an hat-trick, as the game was tied in the 50th minute, Eusébio would bring his A-game and score twice as Benfica became champions of Europe. By the end of the year, Eusébio would miss the Ballon d'Or by as little as 8 points, only managing second place. Over the next 5 years, Eusébio would help Benfica make it to 3 out of the next 5 European Cup finals. In 1963, he would once again dominate at European level, reaching the final where Benfica would face AC Milan. Despite Eusébio opening the score sheet within 19 minutes, Benfica would eventually concede twice within 11 minutes and lose the match. Despite this, in 1965, Eusébio would have his most painful defeat, as after scoring 3 against Real Madrid and then 2 in the semi-finals, totaling an incredible 9 goals, which would make him that year's top scorer of the competition, he would fail to score on the final as Benfica fell short as they faced Inter Milan, who would beat them by a single goal. Despite this, that year Eusébio would finally win his Ballon d'Or. Before Eusébio would play his last European Cup final, he took part in the 1966 World Cup, which would be forever remembered as his peak. Portugal would get drawn in a group with Hungary, who Florian Alberto would win the next year's Ballon d'Or still played for, as well as Bulgaria and reigning champions Brazil, who have both Garrincha and Pelé. Portugal would beat both Hungary and Bulgaria, despite Eusébio only scoring twice during those 2 matches. And finally, they would play Brazil. Luckily for Portugal, Garrincha was injured, which will also favor the press, who took on the battle between Eusébio and Pelé as their narrative for the match. Eusébio had already lost 2 Intercontinental Cup finals to Pelé, as Santos beat Benfica twice. This was time for revenge, and he would do no less than score twice as Portugal made their way to the knockout stage with a 3-1 win over Brazil. There, Portugal would face North Korea, who was an unexpectedly good team at the time, would score 3 times in 25 minutes to put Portugal in a nearly irreversible situation. But nothing was lost when Eusebio was on the pitch, as by the minute 59, he would have scored not once, not twice, but 4 times to completely turn the match around and put Portugal on the semi-finals of the World Cup, in their first ever participation in the final stages of the tournament. In the semi-finals, Portugal would face England, hosts of the tournament. The match would be set on Goodison Park, and as the Portuguese team arrived there, they were informed that the English had decided to change the venue to the Wembley Stadium. This would lead the Portuguese team to spend the night getting ready so they could be at the new venue in time. The Portuguese players would arrive the next day extremely fatigued, as they were unable to sleep due to this situation. Still, to this day, this event is highly controversial, with many believing this to have been a con job by the Englishmen, who feared they would lose to Portugal and fail to reach the final. Regardless of whether this is true or false, Portugal would look weaker than ever, and despite Eusebio still managing to score once, he would leave the pitch in tears, as a double by Bobby Charlton would send Portugal out of the tournament. In the third place match, Eusebio would strike for the 9th time and last time as Portugal beat the Soviet Union, in which is still to this day considered their best ever World Cup campaign, mostly due to Eusebio's incredible performances, would finish as the top scorer of the tournament. By the end of the year, to make matters worse for the Portuguese legend, he would miss out on the Ballon d'Or by the lowest ever margin, a single point, as Bobby Charlton, the same man who sent him out of the World Cup, would take the award. Back at club level, the last of his European Cup finals would come in 1968 and would be the one that would heavily mark Eusebio's career, as he would reach the final after scoring twice against Juventus and leading as top goal scorer of the tournament, as it seemed like it would be impossible for Bobby Charlton to extend his impact on Eusebio's career. It would be the one to put Manchester United in front, and to put them back on the lead after Benfica levelled out the match, as Manchester United would eventually in extra time take the win. In a matter of 2 years, Bobby Charlton would be the cause for Eusebio missing out on the World Cup final, his second Ballon d'Or and second European Cup trophy. Regardless, the two would develop a friendship and stay connected over the next decades. Over the time that is now remembered as his prime, Eusebio had many proposals to leave Benfica, and it is very common for Portuguese people to question why he never left Portugal. Sadly, the only reason he never left was that Portugal was under a dictatorship at the time, and the dictator himself, António de Oliveira Salazar, who was a fan of Benfica, used the false pretense of mandatory military service to stop the player from ever leaving the country. It wouldn't be until the first year after the revolution that freed Portugal from this dictator that Eusebio would leave Benfica to play in the United States. Sadly, at this point he was clearly past his prime and we never got to see Eusebio play for another big European club. As he left Benfica after 15 seasons there, Eusebio had accumulated an astounding 478 goals in 440 official matches for the club, winning the league 11 times. He left as the greatest player in the club's history and remains in that same position, with a statue in the club's stadium to honor his legacy. On the day of his death, fans came to the statue and laid their scarves, and eventually a golden crown was put on his head to honor him as the king of Portuguese football. He was known in Portugal as Pantera Negra, the Black Panther, for his incredible combination of strength and speed. He was decades ahead of his time. It would be nearly half a century before another Portuguese player won the Ballon d'Or. Ending his career with 623 official goals, more goals than matches played at club level, he will be remembered as one of the greatest ever goal scorers. His presence on Portuguese culture was so powerful that he managed to get a whole country, who is coming out of a heavily racist colonial heritage, to cheer for him. His gift to Portugal was far larger than his on-field presence, and for that, as a Portuguese man myself, I say thank you, Eusebio. Getting into our ranking system, probably the deadliest finisher of his generation, easily 10 out of 10 in finishing. Then his positioning. For his time he displayed an incredible sense of where to be in the pitch, not only to make himself available but also to find his teammates as well. This will get him an 8 out of 10. For speed and physicality, it really is a no-brainer. One of the fastest players we've ever seen and one of the most powerful as well. He gets a 10 out of 10. Also, his first touch and ball control. They were almost as his secret weapon. He wasn't known for them, but they were exceptional as well. He gets an 8 out of 10. Then his mentality. He had to overcome so much in his career and that never stopped him from performing anywhere. What player has the mental strength to come back by himself from a 3-0 disadvantage? Well, perhaps another Portuguese player we all know about, but regardless, this gets him a 10 out of 10. Now his legacy. First, consistency, which is very hard to judge as he never left Benfica during his prime, but I guess he gets a 7 out of 10. Secondly, flair. At the time, football was much more straightforward, but clearly Eusebio was one of the most advanced players. He gets a 9 out of 10. Then, his trophy cabinet. This was massively downgraded by the fact that he was unable to leave Benfica. He can only get a 7 out of 10. In terms of longevity, with 12 years between his first and last Ballon d'Or nominations, he easily gets a 9 out of 10. Lastly, the icon factor, easily one of the greatest and most adored players of his generation, still well remembered to this day. He gets a 9 out of 10. This adds up to 87 out of 100, the second highest in this series, only behind Johan Cruyff, which is a true testimony to Eusebio's greatness. He was a phenomenal player and I'm very glad I was able to make this video on him, and I hope you enjoyed as well. This was Eusebio's career in a video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. I really like to hear from you. So yeah, that's it. See you next time.